Hello and welcome to the GlobalChurch Project. I'm Graham Hill. Jack Sara is a Palestinian Christian. He grew up in the old city of Jerusalem near the 8th station of the cross. After his conversion to Christ, he got involved in a Palestinian-led evangelical congregation in Jerusalem's old city. After completing his studies, he returned to that congregation as a pastor. Under his leadership, that church became a church planting movement, reaching out to the Palestinian people and Arabs with the love of Christ. Today, Jack Sara trains people for ministry in Palestine and other parts of the Middle East. He travels globally teaching about missions and peace and reconciliation in the Middle East. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today, sharing something about your journey to faith and your ministry here at Bethlehem Bible College. I thought I'd begin by asking you, how did you come to faith and then move into the leadership of this Bible college?
It's rather a long story, I would say, because we're talking about at least 24 years by now. But I was brought up as I was in a Christian Catholic family, which was, by all means, it wasn't a religious family. It was a family that had roots for hundreds of years here in the country. I mean, I would say, for many generations from Bethlehem, and then my grandfather moved to Jerusalem and ended up, after becoming a refugee, basically losing their houses after the week of 1948 war, and ended up in the old city of Jerusalem, where my father was born, and where we then later married my mom, who also was in what was called then West Jerusalem, and then they had to evacuate their house, run away for their lives, and end up in the old city of Jerusalem in the Christian quarter. So both of them met, married, lived in Jerusalem. I was born then there, inside the old city. And I would say my family was a normal, typical Palestinian Christian family where they just wanted to grow their kids in peace and, educate them so that they, have better future from what my parents had. And that kind of like the move, the encouragement within my own family. Nothing political, nothing about the politics of the whole country. Really, it wasn't there. Even both of them have experienced traumatic experiences as children, and as well with their own families, yet it wasn't part of our daily life. It wasn't even brought up, the subject. I got to know that later on as I did some research on the family history. But within the period which was called the First Intifada, that's a major period of the history of the Palestinians from 87-91. Actually, my own history 91, but it lasted 93 and ended up with the peace process, the Oslo peace process, where ended up that Intifada and ushered a new phase for the Palestinians when the Palestinian Authority came with President Arafat into Palestine. But that period, and especially in 87, as I was 14, I, by all means, and initially I didn't want to be part of it. I can't say I made a decision not to be part of it, but just felt, I need to focus on studying, being away from all the politics of things. However, through several circumstances, I got involved. And I would say, not just me, but you would rarely find someone in my age at that time who did not get involved by their will or just being forced into it because of the situation that we were in. Schools were closed for many months. There were always demonstrations all over the place. Men, women, children, youth, families. Everybody got involved because it was a major push towards what the Palestinians wanted, which is independence and autonomy. And within months, I would say I got involved in the politics of things. I was already in the streets, whether throwing stones or writing graffiti on walls or carrying Palestinian flags and hanging them. At that time, all of these things were illegal. I mean, to do anything around the Palestinian cause, even carrying a little pamphlet that talks about the Palestinians would be illegal, and you might be in prison for 3 months even for holding that. And I would say I did it all because it also became part of what was called then the Communist Party, Palestinian Communist Party, not because I believed fully in their ideology or theology, rather, just felt their politics fit me. They were moving, in terms of demonstration and working alongside the people. So I got involved in that, and somehow the Israelis knew about my involvement. So I get picked up, put in jail, almost, I would say, within the period of 5 years, 7 times. Not long term. I mean, mainly, I think the maximum I served was about 3 months. Anywhere between a week and 3 months all the time. But I got, I would say, towards the end of 1990, the 1991, I felt I need to really do a change. And I loved my people, the Palestinians, and I wanted to do something. Yet I felt maybe this way is not the way. I don't want to end up dying or being in jail for many years. So I decided to quit the whole activity of politics and then begin searching. And within my search, I would say I didn't go far. I was just getting disenchanted with a lot of things, got frustrated with my own self now, how, I'm trying to change, but I can't change myself. Actually, I'm getting even worse, I'm smoking more, I'm drinking more, I'm, hanging out with the wrong crowd. So I felt even more frustrated of that life, to the point that I felt that there should be a change, but I didn't know how. But God in His, I would say, mercy, put me, our house was beside the house of a young man who was a believer in Christ, who was committed to Christ, and who was very dedicated to evangelism and reaching out to people. And he didn't talk with me about the whole issue, except that I heard it, from others. And I saw him walking down the street. I go to him and say, may I have a chat with you? As simple as it is, I just go to him and say, I want to ask you a few questions, may I? So he invites me into his house, and just upon, I would say, within less than an hour of talking, he presented the gospel clearly to me. I knew then that this is really what I was searching for, and committed my life to Christ at that point, back in August 1991. A commitment that really, I would say, made a drastic change, almost 180 degrees in my life, to the point that, nobody believed that this is me. What I'm talking about now, what I'm doing, the being, I would say, crazy for Jesus, which meant almost mental illness to people around. But for me, I knew that I was on the truth, and I was walking on a path that I desired a long time to walk through. I got involved in the church in the old city where that young man was leading, or a young leader then. And within, I would say, a few months, I was making more commitments to walk with Christ. I wanted to study the Bible. So I ended up coming to Bethlehem Bible College, where, almost spent 4 years of studying the Word. Of course, I had no clue I'd be there for 4 years. I thought it's going to be short term, just to study the Bible, then go to university or study something that is related to teaching, education, psychology, something around social work. But as I studied here, God confirmed His calling upon my life to be a minister, to be a servant for my people, the Palestinians. And my church confirmed that through, giving me more opportunities and realizing the gifting that God had entrusted in my life. And within a couple of years, already serving in the church and serving in the community, and desiring to be a minister. So I went actually and did another degree, because I felt I need to equip myself more. Ended up going to the Philippines, in Manila, and there I studied a Master's of Divinity with a focus on pastoral studies, but did another, I would say, partial degree on biblical counseling, because I felt also as I go back, there's a lot of, counseling issues that would be related probably to my pastoral ministry. And by that time, the church had already confirmed that they wanted me to come back as the pastor. So I was on training back in the Philippines, and then when I got back, I already received a full-time position or ministry in the church. And I would say within a year, I was ordained and installed as the pastor of the Jerusalem Lions Church, which is an evangelical church that had history in the country for in Jerusalem for over 50 years in the Old City, but in Jerusalem in general over 100 years.
People don't always hear a lot about what the Christian Church is doing in the West Bank or in Gaza, and I think the story of Bethlehem Bible College is an extraordinary one. I wonder whether you could tell me a little bit about the ministry of Bethlehem Bible College, what programs the students study, that sort of thing.
Sure. Well, up to what I shared just a little bit before, I wouldn't say I got involved fully in the Bethlehem Bible College. I was then just senior pastor in the church and doing even less than a part-time job with the college, in particular in teaching pastoral studies, ethics, Christian ethics. That's what was my focus. Yet, my involvement here empowered my life to do ministry in a better way. I mean, it just enlarged my vision, enlarged my heart to serve my people deeply. And one of the things that, and this is, you asked me initially about this, the move that I made, because it was a major move that I did. You know, my personality, I don't like to change. I don't like to move. You put me in one place and I'll be there forever unless there's a strong hands that move me from there. But as I pastored that church in Jerusalem, I realized that God had given us amazing open doors within that ministry, and particularly serving the Palestinians and the Palestinians in general, not just the traditional Christians or historic Christians that were there, but all the Palestinians. And I felt the church among the Palestinians need to be mobilized to do, I can't say the same thing, but to do more initiatives to serve all the people through, whatever means that the church could go outside the four walls of, they say, our church, and really be there for all the Palestinians, to be the church of the people. And that experience changed my vision to really wanting to be involved, not just in one single ministry, one single church, but really in a wider circle of ministry. I didn't know where. I thought we're going to start something new. And then just God was working in our lives to make a major decision to lead the church and get out there to do something else, which we thought we were going to start a new organization focusing on leadership empowerment, church planting, and mission mobilization, or mobilizing the church for missions. And as we were making this transition, I get invited to be the president of Bethlehem Bible College by the former president himself. Initially, it didn't make sense to me because I was thinking in a different direction. I was thinking north, for example, of the country. Bethlehem is south of Jerusalem. I was thinking a new kind of organization. Then you have a well-established major organization that is almost serving as a hub for evangelical Christianity by all means. And then walking after a founder like Bishar Awad, who founded this college out of scratches and got it to the point where it's one of the, if not the largest evangelical organization and ministry in the country, both in Israel and Palestine. So I was scared, I would say. But God in His calling, confirmed deep in our hearts that this is the stage, this is the platform to serve the church in a better and a deeper way. Because this is not a ministry or an organization that is in competing category with the church. This is not a church, and this is not a parachurch ministry. It's a seminary. It's where you train people to empower people to serve both, church and parachurch, the kingdom work, I would say. And I don't think of this categories of a church or parachurch. I think how we can expand the kingdom of God through the church or any other ministry. So I took this opportunity basically based on that belief that this is that place to become the catalyst, to become the power engine of any movement that could happen, serving the Palestinians in general. Yet through the programs we offer, we provide programs like any other Bible college probably around the globe, of course with more contextual understanding of our context as Palestinians and Middle East understanding. So we have a BA in Biblical Studies, Christian Education. We have an MA in Ministry and Leadership. Then we have diplomas, which we also had done not like a traditional college, which is tourism diploma and then media diploma. And these were geared more towards the community, both, I mean, Christians and non-Christians. Christians to be empowered with, the understanding of ministry and then get a degree in media, which they could use for either serving the church, serving the kingdom, or serving the community. And with the tourism, likewise, at a time where our country also was going through phases of, economy that is deteriorating and lack of jobs, we thought that degree could also help a lot of people to have a job and career in life. And besides that, we provide all sorts of courses, ESL, English as second languages, business training, all sorts of, I would say, seminars and little courses that empower the church and NGOs and other ministries that are serving in the country. Because our country setting is also very, I would say, strange than any other place. It's still the Palestinians in general are not free. There is some sort of an autonomy, but it's more of, I would say, autonomy in certain cities, but a lot of cities are still under the Israeli occupation and strength. And then in Israel proper, where, there's a lot of Christians as well that we're serving. And some of us here are kind of like almost with, you can say, double identities as much as, we're Palestinians, but we carry Israeli IDs and Israeli nationality, citizenships. So those are kind of like put us in a unique place where we want to serve our people, the Palestinians. At the same time, we want to reach out to the Palestinians who live in Israel. And that's 1.6 million people who are living all over the Galilee, all over cities, major Israeli cities. So we did, years ago, we started another Bible college that's like going in parallel with this, with our major support going as well into there to put staff and faculty and a center and educational system within Israel, and that's focused mainly in Nazareth, where we're serving about 40 to 50 students annually within most churches and denominations that are there as well. So in between here and there, we average about 150 students that we're serving within our classroom settings. But yet, I would say the educational endeavor itself goes beyond the classroom. I mean, with a lot of us serving as well in churches, training in churches, and doing major conferences to empower people in leadership and ministry as well.
What do you think are the greatest challenges facing the church today?
Well, if I would say the church globally, it's different than the church here locally, because we do have our major challenges, and I know that church also globally have the major challenges. One of the major challenges, I've seen, within my experience at least, that a lot of the ministries have spread and grow, I would say, wider but not deeper. When I say deeper, that also related to the understanding the Bible and the Word of God as an integral part. So one of the major challenges that I see is lack of knowledge among Christians in general of the Word of God and the importance of understanding it. Secondly, there is a major issue that is also facing the church, is its isolation from the world. God called us to be separate from the world, but not isolated from the world. And that's a major challenge that I've seen it happening in my church, and I've seen it happening not just here in this country, but all over the place, where the church gets involved in its own activities, programs that are all focused around our people, and almost very few things are done outside. So I would say it's a challenge, but at the same time opportunity to mobilize the church to move out, not to kind of dilute their message or compromise the message of the gospel, but really live the message of the gospel in word and deed somehow. I think that's an important issue. The other issue is, which is a third major issue, is the whole idea of disunity. I think that's a challenge. I don't know if it's local only here, but I do believe it's also around the globe. I've been involved in a lot of initiatives to build up councils and build up, unions and networks of churches, so that there'll be more, I would say, cohesions and fully in thought. It's not I would say uniformity as much as a real unity of love, of spirit, of working together, of camaraderie, of really reaching out to the people together with the goal of glorifying God and see the salvation of the nations. I think there is a lot to do in that endeavor. I mean, in terms of the unity of the body of Christ here locally, as we talk about small churches or local churches, but at the same time, I've seen it as well happening globally.
There's a global conversation at the moment about what does it mean for the church to be missional, and how might it renew its mission. Do you have any thoughts about what the mission of the church is and how it would renew its mission in the world today?
I think the word missional got so much kind of like, I want to say misused, but a lot of people really kind of like misunderstand it to mean professional missionaries who go outside our city, outside our country, and go outside there to tribes and people that are pagans or, heathen, or, they don't know anything about Jesus. And when you talk about the word, you say the church wants to be missional, they think of always like setting apart a couple of guys or a couple or a few people and then send them out. Well, it is one of what means for the church to be missional, but the problem is that in order for the church to be missional, it has to be clear with what is the mission. I mean, the missionary carries a message, and the message should be at least clear for the mission before sending out people. And wholeheartedly, I believe it starts actually within us, within our local context before it goes out. So for the church to be missional, that means you live the message of the gospel locally and then carry that globally. A lot of people coin that word with being like glocal, somehow, which I love it. It was also needs to be impacted and to not to be misunderstood, but for the church to be a global church to serve locally and globally, it needs to empower every individual, not just a professional, what we call missionaries. I would say I don't believe in professional missionaries, but I don't believe that the mission work is only entitled to those that we call them missionaries. Every individual Christian is a missionary, and they need to be empowered to understand that. The mission carries the message of the sender. It has to be sent by someone, and God, Jesus, sent us all. And I see all my students like here, over the years, I say, I have one important topic I always teach them. You are all missionaries. You are all carrying a mission. You start with your own context, your own family, your own marketplace, wherever you're serving. As I look at the church, I had people, let's say, I never pastored a large church. I mean, probably the largest number within my own context was 120 people. But some of them were doctors, some of them were teachers, some of them were nurses, some of them were, shop owners, some of them were, working in businesses. And as I look at these people, I see them all as missionaries. I see them all as people who are carrying the mission. So if I want to call my church becoming missional, that means empowering these guys to be a message, to be carrying of the message in their own context. And then I do see as they carry it within their own context, is going to be there'll be repercussions all over the place. I mean, some of my church people were guides, tourist guides. And a lot of the tourists who come to to hire them they know nothing about Christ. They just wanted to see the land of the Bible, I would say, or the history or archaeology or geography of this area. And then these are Christians, if these are not empowered to carry a message to those people that they are serving, which just that's one of the challenges to the guide. I mean, if you are serving group after group of Germans and Americans and Canadians and English and all sorts of things, and you show clearly, not just with preaching to them, but really with your love, with your actions, with your testimony, and share Christ clearly with them. I mean, who knows where these guys are going? You're carrying a message that goes viral with the change that happens to their lives. That's kind of like one sample example of as well what we train our students here as guides. But the same thing applies as well for any other career that people carry. At the same time, I would love to always have what I call the cross-cultural experience, because it provides also another deeper understanding of the mission. That me as a Christian, I'm not Palestinian per se, or an Arab per se. I'm a global Christian. I'm called to serve every other nation in the world. If I have the chance, I want to send my church people, my students here, to be servants of others as well.
What do you think are some of the social and ethical issues that the church is facing today? And second question, how do we equip Christians to engage with those issues?
The same challenge. I mean, within our context, for example, we are traditional Arab, shame-oriented culture that is, I would say, not yet into the individualistic understanding of things. There's still community, family values are very important. Yet, with the what we call the global change that's happening, and postmodern global internet age and everything that's happening, people are getting more and more on their edges in terms of really becoming more and more consumer.
Consumeristic.
Yes, in their lifestyle, and that puts the people into again cocooning into their individual being. I want to study. I want to work. I want to build a business. I want to gain more money. And when you ask them why, it's because for me and my children, so it just focuses again on themselves. So I think that's an issue. We need to push the people out of their comfort zone to look to others as well. And that can't happen in day and night. We need to go back to the real gospel of sacrificial living and sacrificial giving and sacrificial loving to others. Especially in an age where you see a lot of people resisting. I mean, we're living in a Muslim context here, and Christians for many generations have lived in tolerance. I would say we had in the past persecution, we had pressures. We are not a big number. I would say in terms of our community, our numbers are actually dwindling. And that kind of brought the Christian community to kind of encircle around themselves, kind of put this capsule, then just think of themselves without thinking of others. So almost, I would say there are several exceptions, but that's a major challenge actually.
You're in a particular region and setting where there is conflict and injustices. We see this globally, but at the moment, we see quite a bit of this in the Middle East. I wonder whether you have any thoughts about how do we help Christians be peacemakers, be signs of hope, that sort of thing in a world where there is so much conflict and injustice.
In a world that has a lot of injustice, and especially not just in the world, but in our own local context, where Palestinians for over 65 years now have been under occupation, within Israel, and then after the independence, is still what's called Palestine is actually almost a joke, because we're not really independent. I mean, I'm living in between these two words, but in general, our people have been suffering for decades now. And it's probably one of the longest occupation that's there. I mean, in this common world now we're living. So our people have struggled. And then when you talk about the church and the Christians here, they kind of take it as from all sides, as being a small in number, as being also treated unjustly by the army or by the Israelis. You find them either wanting to leave or try to make sense of their living. And trying to make sense of their living, one thing that should be kind of planned is loving our enemies. the word love your enemy is kind of like a daily decision we have to make. Living a life of reconciliation is a daily thing, we have to make. However, a lot of people here, they don't have the best of, I would say, experience with their enemies. Usually their enemies are people who are carrying weapons and waiting on, the checkpoints and giving us hard time as we go in and out or move around. So in a hostile, I would say, environment like this, empowering and almost pumping hope in the lives of these people is a very hard endeavor. Yet, trying to bring the Bible alive, with the life of Christ and really showing models. I believe a lot of Christians here could be models for, and I'm not bragging about it, but they could be really models for love and reconciliation to the whole world, to the whole world. And this is one thing I think the global world and the global church should really kind of like focus or zoom in, like what you're doing yourself now with taking this interview, to really bring up the Palestinian story, not just the injustice that was done to them, but how they did overcome it with continue moving in, planting churches, serving their people, serving their community, trying to build initiatives and build bridges with Israelis. I know Christian leaders, committed evangelical Christian leaders, and others who build bridges with the Jewish Orthodox people, or even with the Jewish people that don't agree with them politically or theologically. And there's the other part of the church here, which is the Messianic Jewish church in Israel, where their outlook is very political and very kind of like dispensational and very focused on the Israel, the land as a land, and with no compromise to any other, and kind of like believing in the whole fulfillment of the prophecies in the Old Testament, etc. and etc. Yet, with their political kind of like attitude, which is so strong against the whole thing of Palestine or Palestinians, still Palestinian Christians are building bridges and reaching out to them with love and seeking reconciliation and offering forgiveness, and which is a great model. And not just in general, but you could see stories of individuals who suffered a lot because of the history that we've been living and still suffering, lost lands, lost houses, lost relatives, and etc. Still, they're willing to go the other mile and really loving their enemies, which is a great model, I believe. If the church does that, not just here globally, I think there'll be a major change in terms of showing the real testimony of Christ, who died on the cross on behalf of the whole world, and yet at that very moment they say, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they have done. And I think that forgiveness is still being released through the Palestinian church in particular, but I think it could be, reproduced all over the globe.
I've often wondered, with the Palestinians living in this land, relating so closely to the world of the Gospels as well, what is unique about the way in which Palestinians read the Gospels?
They don't read it; they see it. I think I think it was Jerome who said the land of the Bible, or this land, is the fifth gospel. Because as we move around, this is Bethlehem. We're sitting in Bethlehem. I live in Jerusalem. Our people live in Nazareth. They live in the cities. Of course, there's all sorts of modernity and things that came into here. But then we have a commemoration of all the spots that speak of the Bible. So the land brings the text more alive as we reflect on it. And I think people, when they understand more the Bible, they become proud of being, I would say, a holy pride, not an evil pride, of really being from the land of the Bible, actually the land of Christ, and with a deep feeling that God loves this land so much that He chose it to be the place that His foot, stepped in, walked around, and gave the ultimate sacrifice. Every time I think that 200 meters away from the house that I grew up in, it's where Jesus paid the ultimate sacrifice for the whole world. Not just for me, just for the whole world, here at this spot. I can't say this is that spot, but, just within a few meters from where we are. And a lot of times it brings me to tears just to not just because it happened in the past, but because I believe it continued to happen. That work that was done 2,000 years is a work that is continuous, and I am part of that story. I am part of this mission, I would say, that was, kind of like had its focal point then and continues to happen now.
I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. My honor. Thank you.
The Global Church Project is located at www.theglobalchurchproject.com. On our website you'll find a wide range of interviews and resources for colleges, universities and churches. I look forward to your company next time. From me, goodbye.